Right.
What it now really says is.
It doesn't sound like it. That sounds more like a tiger.
I'm just gonna bring like a zoo soundboard the next week's meeting.
All right. So any preferences in order? Otherwise, latest to newest it is.
What's the? I'm sorry. Can you scroll down a sec? Keep going. So I see a bunch of ARM intrinsics ones there.
Yeah, the hard one thing I need to set up. Like I haven't done it yet, but
Are you going to talk to Steve before we review those, or what's the sort of sitting on the back burner?
He's not local to Redmond, unlike Faye is, so we're going to have to set up a separate meeting to see if he can.
Okay, so those are kind of on hold.
Yeah, with the whole hardware things, I would group them together and then.
So the Process.Kill one is you already discussed, so it should be like a real quick.
Let's just go with the page and open the ones you want to look at quickly. So let's just open the version. All right.
Okay, so this proposal is dialed back. It used to propose an API for getting the parent of a process and also its children, and there's certain subtleties in that, at least on Windows. So this is dialed back to a safe way to kill a process and potentially all its children, which you can actually implement, at least on Windows. I'm sure you can on Linux. And I think that this went through discussion previously, and the feedback was to dial it back to that. I don't know, I wasn't there, but there may be information at the end. So if that's
there was a question about the policy about what do we do when we can't find the children, or what if you had access to
it's just best effort.
Yeah.
Sure.
I actually put a comment at the bottom regarding what the current behavior is with task manager.
I happen to know why the reason I know it's subtle and how to kill children is because I accidentally shipped a bug at blue screen Windows due to getting this wrong.
Is that what you do? Killing children all the time? Yeah, the API name is unfortunate, I guess, but I think killer's already in there. Right? This is an overload, yeah. And the preferences on the bool versus the in?
Can't make it a default parameter either, can we? Because there's already an overload there.
The parameterless overload would be preferred by the compiler.
So why would we
make it default?
So why would we
make
make
it
it
default?
optional?
Yeah, that's true.
It's a thing you can never call.
Yeah.
Like I think enum would make sense if you envisioned as a third option or something, but I mean, what else would be there?
Entire tree with row one
first area. Like
Which you want because you like words not to work?
We use bool in other places, right? Like directory.remove or whatever, it's bool for recursive or not. Is that true?
I think that sounds right.
Yeah.
I mean, the general thing with enums is that they're nicer to read on the call side,
Sure.
but you
I'm
can
fine.
just say enter process tree or colon false.
I'm fine with an enum. I just don't know why we would make the parameter optional.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing that we would make
Yeah.
is if we wanted to try and go up and down the tree, but that's very, very,
Kill this child
Weird.
and it's
Pen.
everything above it.
yeah,
And
all the way until you hit pin 4.
pools aren't as bad in the latest C# language version, since you can have name parameters anywhere in the list
Right.
now.
Yeah, I think I'd go with the bool in this case. I'm not seeing the enum. I wouldn't put
just
the
one
error
more
cases
time.
into the enum anyways if you're going to do it. I'd probably have other overloads that have error or something.
More bools.
They're not more booleans, but like,
True, false, false, true.
you know, like a callback of something that says here's call me when you get the error or something.
Are you ever going to want more permutations, like what to do when it can't kill something?
That would be another
Depth or
parameter.
something. Right, okay.
Was there discussion about how this is going to be implemented on Linux?
Linux has a. It would be prior art something. PS can show you the process tree. Variable.
Is it actually called kill tree? I'm wondering, should we call this one kill tree as well?
Kill tree is either the Unix or the Windows one.
Well, kill is nice, as Christoph says. If you want to have direct children or something, you don't need kill only direct children. You just have,
Is there a big scenario for,
I
like,
don't
even
know.
if direct children would be outvoted? Yeah.
I don't know why you'd want to kill direct children and nothing else.
I think we agreed that the only reason you call this is for general cleanup purposes. You
Yeah.
usually want to take down everything.
This is what happens when you hit Control-C in the build.
I could imagine maybe adding an overload in the future that takes it down if we have more scenarios that come up. But then at that, if we did that, we would probably also want to add a parameter, like Jeremy said, that controls what happens if we fail to terminate a child.
Do we care about the usability of, I mean, the readability of bool versus enum? So even if it's the enum only has 2 members, is there some readability benefit of forcing someone to write it out? Because like when we use true, we require people to put parameter name colon in front of it. I guess I don't think we care, but
Well, that was the original argument for enums in general, is that because you couldn't do named parameters for the longest time in C#, but that's a fairly recent thing in the last years, right? But I think now, yeah, you just put the name parameter and it's fine.
okay.
I think the biggest downside with enums is that we have tons of enums that literally only have 2 states, and it's hard to imagine a third one. Like,
Yep.
I mean, sometimes it's annoying, like, sort order, like
String
ascending,
split-
descending
string
makes
split
more sense than
options
true
is one
false.
that's always bugged me.
String options.
String split options.
Yeah. Like if it's very likely that you want to have a third one, sure, but I'm not seeing this here. It seems a bit dry.
We could just give it a different name. Or kill tree. I mean, new parameters.
Yeah, apparently neither system actually has that command, but it's in my brain is it's obviously the name of that command.
I was trying to find if there's any others.
I mean, like you would basically have a new method called kill tree that takes.
Nothing the parameters.
Seems a bit weird to me, but it would work, yeah. And logically, it's an overload, right? I mean, you're still killing the process. All right, and let me just write this up.
Is the name entire process tree the right name for the Boolean? Should be cursor children or kill children as well. Children and cursor children.
I thought I got a comment on there regarding what the Windows speaker does.
What is it currently? Entire tree or something?
Entire process tree is what the primary. Could call it children as well.
Kill with children true.
Yeah, we
Seems a bit more horrible than it needs to be,
don't want to
maybe.
call children.
I think entire process tree is actually not horrible.
So the Process.Kill command says if you give it a negative PID, it will choose the whole process group.
But that's not well beyond this hierarchy.
Yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah,
Where is the process
that,
group?
that could kill someone unrelated. Right? It's anyone associated
The
with the terminal.
equivalent of
Right?
Windows job.
Not the terminal, it's the child, like things can opt out of being in the same group as the process that spawned them.
Right.
And I think by default they're in it.
Well, you can do that on Windows too. You can essentially fork rather than create child process.
Multiple times I've gone to a search engine and typed in the phrase "man kill," so look for the man page. I feel like someone's tracking my behavior.
In Windows 3, it used to pop up a dialog saying you performed an illegal operation. And it used to cause a lot of consternation. They had to change it.
As a kid, that terrified me.
Right.
You have to listen to the siren.
Yeah, like kill -1 is apparently interesting. Kill every process except init and kill.
That seems like a good idea.
All right. Done.
So in a nutshell, I want the random class, the non-cryptographic random class, has the ability to return a number, an integer within a range between min and max. There should be a cryptographic way.
Is there a reason this would be limited to just in 32? If you look at random, it's got 32, it's got double.
There's a proposal up for long now.
No, right, but I mean, like,
Yeah.
we're only talking about adding a subset of the random APIs here. Is there a particular reason we've chosen this subset?
Let me look at something real.
What's the non-cryptographic one? Just random?
Just random.
I mean,
It's got next double, this proposal for next 64.
because I know that the system.random is based on doubles.
Yeah.
And so next double is actually its primitive. This is not based on doubles, so and I don't know what happens if you fill a random bit pattern in and say this is a double.
It wouldn't be random. What you would do is you would use a, I forget all the different terminology, but you would use a mantissa, I think, between 0 and 1, and then just fill out everything after the decimal, basically. That way you get an even distribution. So it has a floor of 0 and a ceiling of 1 minus epsilon.
And avoids all the specially coded values.
Yeah, because those are sequential between 0 and 1.
I'm getting all my terminology wrong, but hopefully that makes sense.
Mantissa and exponent are the words.
Yeah.
I don't remember which part's what. Those are the words.
Yeah.
And then there's the sign bit, and then a bunch of illegal states.
Yeah. Anyway, as long as you can constrain it to between 0 and 1, you can get an even distribution.
For these APIs specifically, presumably they would be get int 32 rather than get integer.
If we wanted to add long and double, then we would probably need it.
32 seems fine.
I would just call it reserved for consistency.
Is that what we call it on random?
No, random just says next,
Yeah.
and it just is overloaded. But on the random number generator, they have methods called getBytes. So it seems that get in 32 seems more reasonable. I suppose the two exclusive is the same thing that what random does, right? I mean, they're named differently, but the upper is, I think,
It's
exclusive.
an exclusive.
One other interesting thing here is that these are static methods, not instance methods. The idea being that you shouldn't have to do an RNG to use each. It makes testing a little difficult.
Is there, so one of the things with random, and it would show up here as well, is you can't ever get 32.max value back. Should there be a get integer that's parameterless that would give you the full range?
That's just called get bytes, and then split into units.
Right,
Yeah.
but the implementation would be simple, but I'm wondering if there should be such a
I mean, just get in with no parameter.
get in 32, yeah.
Generally, the way that you would call this is you would call get integer and then pass in array.length for your two exclusive parameter. That's the overwhelming use case for this, because you want to choose a random element from the array, and arrays can never have 32 max values. I mean, I see the technical reason that we could do it. I just don't think there's a scenario for it.
Dumb question. If this is calling something called getBytes and you want the upper end to be less than 255 or whatever, how's that achieved? You just pick bits. Maybe this is really dumb.
Implementation detail.
Okay.
there are
You
lots
can
of
do that.
ways to do it.
I mean,
Actually, if
okay.
you scroll down, Jeremy has an implementation.
Oh, okay.
I know what it would look like to call it intrinsic, and assuming the LZ count works on all platforms. But yeah, other than that,
Yeah, like Jeremy has one implementation, I have another, I think there's a third in there. There are lots of ways.
yeah, I found that the best way to clarify his intent was, do you mean an implementation like this?
I'm sorry.
Why are these static?
I'm sorry if I missed this in an earlier conversation, but why are we using get integer instead of getting the word random in there somewhere?
It's randoms in the class
Because
name.
get bytes does something different.
Huh? This is on our class
Get
called
bytes.
random.
Random number generator is a class name.
I'm sorry, I've got callback in my home now. I'm multitasking. I will try to stop doing that.
So
That's
two
fine.
questions. One, why are these static, and why are they not virtual?
Actually, I think, Jeremy, you had a reason for making them static, right?
They're not virtual because they're static. And the reason is essentially we don't expect anyone should ever implement the random number generator. We added the static fill method to do the overwhelming use case of I have an array, fill it with random data, and then the algorithm is you fill the number of bytes that you need to return this answer. So we could make it virtual, then you'd have to add a using again to add it, or we make it static and say that we don't expect anyone to ever create a new implementation of ours.
So random number generator itself is abstract right now.
Yeah.
And there's different implementations.
What it returns when you call random number generator.create is a non-public class.
Like
Right,
in
but if
practice,
it's
no one
static,
creates implementations.
and you're implementing a random number generator, which is itself abstract, does that currently make sense? Considering that there's no implementation for it to use as the backend, and some people
There is an implementation. You can't specify it. We specify it. End of story. The class should have been static always.
It really should have, yeah.
So if we were into the philosophy of deprecating things, we would deprecate create.
I would love that. Yeah, so it makes things a little difficult to unit test if you need consistent random numbers for purposes, but it just means you would refactor your code to take like the random number as a parameter.
I didn't think the crypto class would ever do deterministic even with seeds.
No, I mean if you wanted to create your own implementation for unit testing your code. But like in practice, in real world code, no one ever subclasses this.
Same for system.random, I would assume.
Right. Actually, I don't
No,
know.
system.random, people subclass it.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. There's a bunch of third-party numerical libraries that provide their own random derived terms.
Yes.
Because I mean, there are other random number generator algorithms, but really you shouldn't ever want one, and nothing that we would ever use that does random number generation accepts an RNG. They always just call RNG.create, or if they're compiled against that core, they call RNG.fill.
I mean, these are good questions, though, right? It's just we wish we could change.
Yeah, if we're gonna add in 64 to system.random, we can go ahead and add it here, or we can hold off and do them together. I don't care.
The primary use case for this is exactly what you mentioned. It's getting indexing into an array or something.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so let's stick to that 30 targets.
Yeah, I was about to say, what do you do with a long usually, right?
It'd be, int random index equal RNG.getIt32 of data.length. Great, I don't give you back a random value.
Yeah, the two use cases are that and just creating random data for like test case usage.
Never do that.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much all of our test cases use random specifically because we can pass in a seed that's
exactly.
deterministic.
For the random number generator itself, which fails about once every 2.5 years when we get an unfortunate string of zeros out of the RNG. Like, crap, someone deleted the implementation and returned too many zeros. Oh, no, that's not retract.
I think we
added a loop to it, so now it only fails once every like 3.4 billion years.
Oh God, no! Based on principle, who filed it?
Me. Yeah.
This is awesome.
All right, so basically there are APIs that, the key use case here is there are APIs that take objects. And if you have to call those APIs repeatedly, every time you call it passing in a value type, it gets reboxed. And so wouldn't it be nice if you could create the box once and then replace the value in the box each time? That's exactly what the IEL unbox instruction lets you do. Basically, you effectively get back a ref to the thing in the box. And I'm proposing we just expose that as a C# method that lets you get a ref of T to a box of T, to the T in a box. And so if you scroll down, you can see like this is code from CoreFX. There's this create canonical name. You can see it's called in builder.append format, where numbers contains a bunch of U shorts. And every time we call append format, it's boxing the U short.
Right.
But if with this, we can just box it once. Let's scroll down a little bit. Box it once, and then fetch the ref U short out of the box. And then in the loop, we just replace the value in the box every time rather than boxing it.
What's numbers on that?
I mean, it's an allocation each time.
Yeah, I'll instruct the call unbox for this.
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting the unbox API to basically give me something back that I would then mutate. I was thinking.
Yeah, so I mean, while there are potential optimizations, I was talking with Levi about this. The code I was proposing is for 4 lines of IL at the top of the screen.
What is the bank?
Unbox IL. Is that
It's the generic reference.
Oh, it's just a reference.
Is that
to the T,
verified
yeah,
type?
that's right.
It does verify the type. So that's what I was talking about with Levi, is whether that would be required from an API perspective or not. In theory, since this is all on unsafe, you could say, well, if there were an easy way of avoiding doing that validation, we would probably be okay with that. But Unbox does it anyway, and I don't think it's probably worth avoiding the check. Unless we.
I would still say that you're probably only going to call it once per method given the design, and therefore doing the type check stops you from just shooting yourself in the foot. So the type check's good.
Yeah. So the question was basically, if in this case, would the call it unbox be outside or inside the loop? If it's outside, it doesn't matter now.
So why is it unsafe?
Yeah. Mutating an object in GC.
So, but why is it unsafe? So, I mean, like it's like signing a field that you have a reference to, right? It's fundamentally not an unsafe operation.
It could be unsafe from the perspective of so boxed value types are supposed to be immutable from the perspective of you can never mutate the value that's contained within the box without going through instance methods on the boxed object itself, such as through like an interface or something else.
There's also code in various places that assumes that boxed value types are immutable, so they'll cache like a boxed true and they'll cache a boxed false.
Yeah.
And this lets you take any such object and change its data.
If you return to ref read only, you could probably say that this doesn't have to be unsafe.
But then Steve could.
But then I couldn't use it.
Yeah. you would now have to turn the ref read only into ref, which is a proper unsafe operation. But now you have 2 calls instead of 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I buy the scenario. I'm with Wes. The name seems weird, but that's what the instruction is called, and so be it.
I guess in general, my thinking for putting it on unsafe, I guess maybe I didn't put a ton of thought into it, but pretty much everywhere where we drop down to IEL to implement something, we put it on the unsafe class.
Good point. Because we're bypassing the
C#
language semantics and using the other languages.
That's just because C# sucks. If you would have proper inline order, you wouldn't have to do it. Yeah. No, it seems fine. I mean, I didn't say any other place that we could put it but unsafe. We don't really have. I mean, it will be a brand new type. It's something compiler service.
We don't have an IL intrinsic class yet, do we? That's this guy.
And then you'd have to create a new IL proj and
Actually, we do. We have IL intrinsics on unsafe.
Yeah,
We have unsafe and it block. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool API.
was there any discussion on including this in the compiler intrinsics that's going to be implemented for C#8?
I have not discussed that. No.
What are the compiler intrinsics?
Things like call I being exposed directly rather than through a proper language feature, basically.
So it's a proposal for basically a type that would expose those things, and then you can call them. The compiler would be aware of what it would emit. Is that the idea?
Let me open it. Jared just merged the proposal. It's adding a few new keywords, it looks like, and some basic language semantics. So, for example, being able to take the raw address of a method, which returns a void pointer, and then exposing things like an address of keyword.
And call it.
Yeah, and being able to call it through handle of, etc. It's basically a few new language keywords to cover things that you can't do in the language today that we're not quite sure on the design for.
Interesting.
Well, is unboxing something and getting a ref back to it something that would be considered like something you'd want to do in the language? Because normally when you consider unboxing something, you normally consider making a copy of it, right? Not getting a ref.
Right. That's something that, it would have to be discussed and find out the merits of.
Okay.
But I just wasn't sure if that had been brought up as a possible alternative. Although, even if that was done for C#, this lets you do it in languages like F#, etc. as well.
Well, then the other question is if you how would it look like? Right, it would be an unsafe keyword, like similar to handle off, where you have parentheses. You would have unbox of blah, and then you would probably want to enforce that this is only used in unsafe code, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's the thing with most of the compiler intrinsics so far is unsafe only, which matches the unsafe class. But
right. Except that this is
This
slightly
doesn't
easier
require
to
writing
code.
unsafe code.
Yeah,
It requires writing the word unsafe with a capital, which is safe, even though most of the time it's not.
We should require using the unsafe keyword.
Yeah, I wish we could.
Choose another language proposal we had, like an unsafe attribute that you would enforce this. Yeah, I think I'm generally fine with that. Anybody else, any concerns? We could look into this, but it seems a bit over the top to do that.
Steve, the code that you want to use it for, do you want to consume it within private corelib, or do you want to consume it from CoreFX right now?
Right now, the only uses for it I've seen have been in core.
Can you send me the link to the proposal?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are.
The implementation will be in native code. How does this work?
There's an IL project. The unsafe is an IL project, so literally copy and paste that.
Oh, it's already added on. Okay.
Well, a lot of the unsafe classes also in core.
It's implemented differently.
It's a JIT.
And what's your GitHub name?
Me?
No, you.
Oh, Tanner Gooding.
Oh, that's boring.
Mm-hmm. Grab your pitchforks is much more interesting.
Yeah, that's much more.
And not at all inflammatory.
But it is memorable.
For the process one, did we agree on the name of the parameter was entire process tree?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just make that for clarity. I'll put that in.
Who's driving the compiler intrinsics? I guess that's Jared.
Yeah, I think he's currently championing right now. But Tomas and Jan have provided a bunch of input.
Well, we never shy off opinions. That is a fact for sure. Maybe we should add the other part to it too.
How do you include a link to that? Because I'm not subscribed to that.
I mean, even if we would do it in the compiler internally, we would still need an API, I think, so that F# doesn't have to go through crazy hoops. Because last time we didn't consider other languages, we got in trouble. So let's not do this again. Ah, yeah.
This is an API that already exists.
Yeah, it's already in the server.
In NetFX, they wrote it in 4CLR, they just forgot to put it in the ref.
No, I think we removed it because it was not implementable cross-platform.
Do we review things like that, or we just assume if it's in NetFX it gets passed?
Oh, it's public.
Well, I would put it this way. Like, to me, if we add an API that has the exact same behavior as .NET Framework, I'd rather have the same API.
Yeah.
Like, if the API is fundamentally problematic and we want this to have a different shape or whatever, then fine. But like, usually, you know.
No, I agree. I was
compared.
so maybe I'm misinterpreting. I thought this was saying it's public in core.
Yeah, but in
the refs.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
it doesn't exist in .NET.
it's not in the refs. Yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
My assumption has been that if there's an API that's in .NET Framework and we just want to expose it in .NET Core, it doesn't require approval
Yeah.
because it's just doing.
Add a smoking test case. Yeah. Hopefully the test case itself is not smoking already.
That's generally the case, yes, Steven.
Do we care about drawing in this case?
I mean, it'll do whatever CoreCLR does. If we don't like what CoreCLR does, we'll change it. And if it doesn't work, then PNSC is the right answer. Apparently, Jan thinks the null point.
Did you say that?
I saw the word null next to the word Jan.
There's nothing fundamentally preventing supporting this API on non-Windows platforms. I believe that will work fine on CoreCLR Unix today. When the exception pointers are not available, the API should return now. I do not think it should though. That works.
Seems like an implementation detail in Jan's prerogative.
We do throw in the debuggers dependent on it. We'll just get a regression from Visual Studio saying, fix the code, make it faster.
They'd have to add the line of code and say, well, why'd you ship it on Linux without testing it? I agree in general. Our customers tell us fix your code and make it faster. Yours will.
What account? Yeah, that one I'd rather not do an API review for because I think an attribute is fine. I think the name is reasonable, the location is reasonable. I'd rather have a feature design review on like how this is actually used by customers.
I mean,
like my general
is the
concern of these kind of things is you sprinkle them all over the code base and then you do something and suddenly like you get like drastically different behavior just because you sprinkle an attribute somewhere.
so it said it's the API part of Design 42.
Yeah.
Is Design 42 a
Did you see that? What do you do? Oh, here we go.
approved thing? In which case,
No, we should look at
Is
it.
it
I've not
polished
looked into
or-
this. But before we did the last thing. 28 days ago, yeah. Before we follow that, we come more closely. I'll talk to them offline about that. For that first.
We already talked about this.
Anything familiar?
So you had asked me a question at the bottom, and I responded to the question.
Oh. Oh, yeah, I remember.
Doesn't mean we should, but I wanted to respond to the
Yeah,
comment.
that makes sense. I mean, the other ones are only input. Yay! One more now. I can just refresh that list. Oh, a few more.
We're doing 2 hours tonight?
Unless somebody else has something else.
I was just gonna ask you about understanding reviews.
Those are the ones we that go public with the board. Yeah, I need to set them up. I was hoping we can do them on the agenda.
Steve, is this the right layer for this?
What is it? Should be
Where do you think it should belong?
I don't know what all the communication layers are between the client object and the handler object, but it seems weird that if somebody wanted to tune something like this, that they'd have to go from calling the client default constructor to needing to create a handler to tell the handler, apparently my server didn't implement HTTP2 correctly, or I would like you to try HTTP2, or...
So there are effectively 3 places this could be. This could be on the HTTP client, this could be on the handler, or it could be on the message that gets passed to the handler. The message that gets passed to the handler already has a version that says what it wants, so it doesn't belong there. And then it's just a question of, do you want it so prominent that it exists on HTTP client, or in which case it also needs to be supported by every handler you may possibly give to it, or do you want it on the handler itself? I don't know what it would actually mean to work on. If we put it on HTTP client, HTTP client would presumably have to change the message that got passed to it, or to downgrade it to the particular version in order to pass it off to the handler. Generally, we're a bit squeamish about modifying the message.
But now realizing
Never mind.
Was that you?
No, that was like I was checking the comment.
About modifying the message that's passed in. So I think we'd want it on the handler. And then it's a question of, well, which handler? If you put it on HTTP client handler, then we have to support it on all of the various handlers when HTTP handler under the covers. If you just put it on sockets HTTP handler, then if you care, you figure it on that. I honestly don't think a lot of people are going to need to change this. The primary reason for this is in case we screw up, because when we add HTTP2 support to sockets HTTP handler, because now the default for the message is to default to 2.0 if the handler supports it, immediately all code that was targeting 1.1 will start going with socket HTTP handler, and we kind of need an escape hatch if we screw up for people to downgrade.
Isn't that an argument for making this static then?
No, because it could only affect a particular site. So if we don't communicate well with a particular site and you partitioned you're using a handler for one or something like that.
Yeah, I misheard you. I thought you were saying in case there was a problem like with the core code itself, the way that we've implemented.
Well, so for example, maybe we add support for push promise and we screw that up. Some sites use it and some aren't, something like that.
So what happens if the message says 2 and this says 1.1?
It would get downgraded. in the implementation, but it wouldn't change the message.
And what happens if they say 17.3?
I think setting the version will throw.
Okay.
That's my assumption. This
Probably
Jeff,
Yeah, it's
there was some question about whether we want this at all. I think Carol had some concerns that maybe we don't need this, that maybe we're being too preemptive, or maybe, point in time problem. So,
I don't know. I mean, I can see argument. I guess it's that they could do it on the. I guess that's Carol's argument that they could do it on the message. I was gonna say if you're having trouble talking with a, like if a particular server has a bad server side version of HTTP2, then you could want to downgrade it, but that would be at the message level. So maybe the answer.
the downside to the, so I'm fine with that too. Like I don't have strong opinions on this. The downside to doing it at the message level is all the convenience overloads on HTTP client.
Can somebody explain to me why David is opposed to doing it in the HTTP client handler, but he thinks the socket HTTP handler is better? Aren't those the same things? Isn't the one of them is derived from the other, or they both share base type or something?
HTTP client wraps the handler. Sorry, wait.
Client handler versus.
Yeah. So David's. I'm sorry. Where are you? Are we more
This
concerned
one.
talking about adding this HTTP client? Oh, so a little confusing. So the design of HTTP client is such that you construct it around an HTTP message handler.
Okay.
HTTP message handler is the base class that any handler derives from.
Right.
Both HTTP client handler and sockets HTTP handler and Win HTTP handler and curl handler all derive from HTTP message handler.
Okay.
Sockets, Win HTTP, and curl handler all are their own implementation. We're talking sockets targeting Win HTTP, targeting the curl.
Yep.
HTTP client handler is sort of a virtual handler. It doesn't have its own implementation. It wraps whichever one of those is relevant to the current platform.
I see.
So HTTP client handler defaults to wrap sockets HTTP handler, but if you set an environment variable or app context, it'll fall back to instead wrapping Win HTTP handler on Windows or curl handler on Linux. So I think David's concern is needing to add or having to add that support to all of those handlers if it's added to HTTP client handler.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, doesn't that make more sense to have this as a virtual property directly off of the base handler? And then, because why would you not? I mean, they all talk HTTP, right? There's nothing specific about sockets for the next HTTP, right?
So what if it was make HTTP client have default HTTP version, which can be null, and null means let the handler pick, and then all your convenience overloads can use that, and you can set it on your client. Because if we already understand the flow of on a message handler, you said you want to speak HTTP version 38, and things do something with that, then who cares what the default is? And
So wait, how does you're saying default?
if the client,
How would that be implemented?
so if the client has a proper, I mean, so again, I don't know what anything with the HTTP client API looks like, but you said that there are convenience overloads that wouldn't work or wouldn't be as nice if we put it on, it told people to put it on the message.
Yeah.
So something somewhere is building these messages, and something somewhere is assigning the HTTP version to these messages.
You're saying in addition to this, add a default version?
No, instead of this.
Well, what if someone then creates their own? If I say new HTTP request message,
Whatever you put on it.
and whatever I put on it, regardless of what the handler says.
The property on the client, I'm suggesting, would only apply to the convenience overloads, but it's being the message factory.
Right.
Because all the handlers already have to deal with what if somebody requests a version from the future or any other version they know to be illegal. So
Right. This isn't so much about things it knows to be illegal. This is the handler supports 2.0, but you want to ensure that anything goes through it doesn't use. So you're saying if I'm creating the message myself, I just don't specify 2.0, and if I'm not using the message myself, I set the default on each.
yeah. And then it applies to all the handlers sensibly, and it lets you use it as a valve for this. This server doesn't support HTTP2, as opposed to our client doesn't currently support HTTP2. It seems a much more useful API. Because all it does then at that point is control the message factory.
Seems reasonable to me.
And then the same workaround where we tell people to go change the value of this, we tell them instead change HTTP client.default.
The problem,
HTTP
so here's the problem that I think Jeff would object to. I think Jeff's primary concern is we have a bug and you want to affect all traffic. Right now, the default for HTTP request message, its version, the default to 2.0. So you'd need to, rather than changing this in one place, you'd need to go set a version on every message you sent. For better or worse.
Are there scenarios where the application code doesn't control the message, maybe because they're using like a third-party library?
Yes. Although in that case, you probably wouldn't control the handler either.
Indeed. So if I build a message directly, it already says 2. Since when?
This past release. I agree with that base.
Okay, so maybe that's the place where the default needs to be public, and then they can change it on that default.
Yeah, it sounds like the answer, the question here for Jeff and David is this really the right place to expose it, or would be better exposed as HTTP client.default version and HTTP request message? An instance HTTP client.default version property and a static HTTP request message. Right?
Yeah, something along those lines. Because particularly, like looking at this, I understand that the scenario for this is we're afraid that our implementation's broke, but if we make it more general and you're afraid that the communication on this particular line is going to be bad, then now you say, oh, well, if J random server on the internet that I need to talk to does some particular piece poorly, now I need to go change all of my code to go build the messages directly. And instead, if we solve that scenario, it solves this scenario too.
That sounds good. Did you catch the summary?
Not yet. Let me just reconnect with me so that people join the. So say the last part again.
Basically wondering whether this is the right way to expose it or whether it would be better as something like an instance default max version property on HTTP client and a static and a static default version property on HTTP request message.
So get the handler. What does the thing on the message do?
So there's sort of multiple use cases. Let's say you're just using the APIs. You construct a new HTTP client and you're using the get async, get string async, whatever APIs in HTTP client. Internally, HTTP client is constructing HTTP request message. You have no way today of influencing the version. So you could say if we added an instance default version property to HTTP client, say basically use that version in any messages that it constructs. Then there's separately the case of, well, what if you're talking to servers or something that have bugs, or if we detect that we have bugs and we just want to force all messages regardless of whether created with HTTP client or not, whether I construct them myself.
Oh, like basically a process global setting that everybody can use.
Or maybe we just say, you're using HTTP client, those factory methods pick up the default on HTTP client. Otherwise, if you're constructing HTTP request message yourself, set the version yourself. Or this. I don't have a particularly strong.
Yeah, so I think that this is about exposing a knob of we're afraid of something. But if we generalize the use case to this is a new protocol and maybe there are issues with it, and when the next protocol comes along, maybe there are issues with it, then this is the wrong layer. And then it makes sense to be public API because we've addressed a more legitimate user case instead of a we're afraid of our code.
HTTP client already has a property called, I think it's default headers or default message headers. So this would kind of go along. Any message it constructs gets those headers, any message it gets them.
We just stayed on 1.1 for so long that Nobody considered that it needed to be a tunable option. Okay, protocol awesome.
Okay. Let me just copy and paste in what I typed up. So. Modular typos. That's
I'm not sure I understand too. If it was on HP Message Handler, it would implicitly be on HP.
I guess that's fair, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just say that would we might also want. I'm not sure. They're sort of two separate things.
Yes. Let me just go ahead and put a file. All right, so let me copy and paste that in again. Again. Right, let's wait for an answer on that one. Is there anything else? This one I think we ran out of time last time, right? We did that.
We send it back with questions, or did we?
No, this was a different one that we discussed a few weeks ago. This was like how do I specify a predicate so that I can extract only like text files from the
Right.
ZipFile?
Right, I know we started talking about it. I just don't remember if we sent it to Ian and Jeremy K for questions, or if we just ran out of time.
Well, I think I
Well,
talked enough
yeah,
with
so
Levi.
it's-
Like, I mean, I'm honestly of the opinion now that after talking to him that it makes sense to have the API. I mean, pretty much all the code I've ever written that uses loops is effectively just specifying a predicate. That's all I've ever done. Like, yes, it is not like a tremendous amount of line savings, but you know, it's still nice to just be able to just call an overload rather than rewrite the entire method what it is you started writing. And I think it. Yeah, I think the overload is reasonable. I think I checked them last time already that they composed it to once. Because I was surprised they've even encoding. But yeah, for some reason. This is always this case where I'm sad that we didn't use defaults to begin with, because now every single time we add one more, it's like, yep, and 8 more methods get created. But here you go. What was the other one?
Solve this problem and never overload it again.
It's not unreasonable. I think we have enough stuff now that it warrants to be having options.
I don't know that zip file options is the right name. It'd be like zip extraction options.
Yeah, that's a good point actually.
Otherwise it sounds like it's options for a zip file instead of options for the extract method for the zip file.
Create and extract.
Oh, I see. Because they want to use it as the glob for what to pick up out of the directory as well. Oh, that's true.
Yeah, I guess override makes no sense in that case, but that's the other ones. I mean, the problem of using it for create and extract though is that you kind of have to know, like, entry filter makes also no sense for create.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Oh,
You want to pick up zip archive entry. Well, you want to pick up only text files when you're creating the zip archive, but that wouldn't be the right predicate.
I mean, you could filter at the entry level, but that would be a bit over the top.
And you wouldn't really want a compression level filter on extract. I mean, would that mean like, oh, if it's not compressed with highest, then don't extract it?
Like, if we went this route, we would probably just want to do 2 different options.
Yep.
Do we have to go ahead and add the default overload?
Actually, that's a good point. We could actually, yeah, that's a good point. We could do that.
Sorry, what was that?
Let's go ahead and add the overload load option, I think, on default parameters.
And not have the zip file options class.
I like that. I like that
A
more.
little improvement on option.
Yeah, that is, I think, the more sustainable way, and it avoids having no more time. All right, let me just write this down.
And every single one of the parameters.
Levi, do you know if there was a discussion with them of whether or not, like, if we think that the majority use case is with this extension,
I
is that
don't
a
know.
sensible overload,
I
or
don't know if that's a majority use case. Like, I have a feeling the majority use case would actually be pattern matching the file name rather than a simple extension.
The extension just happen to be the one we've documented on the scene, right? For example.
Probably. Like, I want to extract everything but exclude, like, the bin and obj.
yeah, I mean, it's just a question of, is there something nicer than creating a predicate?
There is.
But if
I
it
just
isn't-
don't know if it would be useful enough to let people.
And I guess somebody can just write the helper method for themselves.
Actually, let's also reassign that while he is out of office.
Yeah, then pick the right person.
Yeah. I'll
Just reading the very first sentence makes me not very inclined for
Yeah, I mean,
continuing to read.
do we have the Hebrew calendar or the Chinese calendar that have similar properties?
We have a Hebrew calendar. I don't know, not sure.
I mean, I'm just naming all the lunisolar calendars. But
I'm sure Terry must have championed on this somewhere. So.
He did, yeah.
we ignore the word override. It would make a class.
I mean, my question would be who's using that calendar? Is it just something that somebody finds interesting, or is it actually in use? It seems a bit.
There is in the issue description at the bottom a snippet on religious use of the calendar.
Like I'm still, I mean, based on the conversation Tarek had, it seems like the OS is not supporting it. So we would have to carry our own calculation/data to predict dates, which
Question is, would this be better off if they're
Yeah, at that point, I'm honestly not inclined to take it.
ICU and Windows OS aren't supporting, we shouldn't.
Yeah, I think that's where I would draw the line too. Like if it's not important enough that OS provides it, then too bad. Can you ping Tarek is he in or is he out? Yeah, he has like 45 minutes and we can just have him talk to them. Because he's clearly engaged here and he's writing a lot of comments. Before I rejected him, I think he should be able to at least give it 5 minutes. Alright, this should be easy. Compare info.
Yes. Do it.
You say this because it has span in the name, or do you say that because you actually missed
I say this because like I've re-implemented all of this for ASP.NET because it didn't exist once. And it looks like we first running. Actually, I wanted it on. Yeah, compare everything.
Eric's coming back.
Perfect.
Wait, I'm confused. So the rationale is this doesn't support comparison with specific culture. How does passing compare options allow you to specify the culture?
No, it's the
These are on CompareInfo.
Yeah.
Got it.
I
So you're specifying the culture via this.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So are these
I believe there are no span-based
virtual?
overloads of those right now.
No, they're not. I just looked at compare info.
Yeah.
It has string char, string, string.
Yeah, I didn't even notice the class this week.
Yeah, but so CompareInfo compare is virtual.
Yes.
CompareInfo index of string is virtual. So would all these be virtual? With our usual complicated figuring outiness of how do we make this both performant and extensible?
I guess the question is, do we actually care about extensibility here, or like does anyone actually derive from CompareInfo?
I mean, if you were writing a new culture comparison operation that wasn't built into the OS, your only option would be to take these spans, turn them into strings, and then use the overload that way. Because we don't seem to have one that takes char arrays or a char star. So this one doesn't have we can cheat and equivalence it into something else without copying.
Well, what happens if we add the API and somebody derives from it and overrode one of those methods? If we now call them, you get what behavior?
Well, that's what Henry was saying. Basically, we have to do the same trick we do elsewhere, which is basically check the type of this, and if it's something we know is safe, then do the fast thing. Otherwise, delegate to something else that's expensive.
Welcome to the problem with span.
So then we create a string and then call the existing API. Is that what we would do?
Yep.
If we think that extensibility here is something we actually, I don't know the answer.
I don't know. Does anybody derive from that internally?
I mean, this again, it just sort of comes back to what's our answer for VB and C#? That if they ever had a thing where they wanted to define a custom CompareInfo, how does this?
Well, I'm asking, is that a scenario of defining a custom comparison?
Take those. If people create their own custom.
Not many. I never saw that.
But all three of them are very happy.
Yeah, this just goes back to the argument we can have because Christoph isn't here of that we have the rule that things should not be sealed unless we have a reason it needs to be sealed. Things should be sealed unless we design extensibility into it.
Agree completely.
Let's go change that rule while Christoph's on leave.
Yep,
And then
perfect.
he'll come back and we'll say, sorry.
This is the rule.
No, to be fair, Chris's argument is not that. Chris's argument is there's a difference between virtual and sealed. He's not saying have virtual methods everywhere. He's saying if you have a type that has no virtuals, Still, not feeding the type adds value because people just instantiate that type, tag their own data on it, and that's generally safe. Like there's not much that can go wrong. You're only in trouble when you have a class that has virtuals. That's when you have to think about what happens if I add an overload, right? Which I would agree with. So if you have virtual methods, you have to think about extensibility. You shouldn't just make things virtual for the heck of it, which I think is part of the problem of this type.
We should just recommend that if you add virtual methods to a type, you also seal it.
Yes. I think that's a very reasonable approach.
How is this different than what we have today in CompareInfo? We have the same method.
These are spans.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand, but how is this different? I mean, what is the concern?
Well, the concern is, imagine you have a bunch of data that you have currently in span form. In order to do a cultural comparison, I now have to create a string in order to do that. So you basically allocate, right?
Are you asking what the concern is with adding these APIs?
Yeah.
The question is whether we put virtual on them or not.
I don't think we need to change from here.
The other ones are virtual.
The string versions are all virtual.
Every method on this type, including every overload of every method, is virtual. Because of
Yeah, so you can declare a custom one that overrides the string, but forgets to override the string int.
Anyone want extensibility? I mean, like they can create their own methods to do that, extension methods. So they don't need really to override.
Not if they're not virtual. Like if you pass this.
I will create extension methods that does what I want to do. I mean, with CompareInfo and
No, so the point would be if something takes a CompareInfo because it's virtual, and then they call last index out passing it 2 spans. Custom CompareInfo that I made is useless. You're not calling it. You're calling the base class implementation now. And there was no way that I could get you to route into my code.
Well, there's 2 things. One is someone has already derived from CompareInfo. We add these methods. Do these methods delegate to their virtual implementation? That's separate from whether we make these virtual, which would then allow them, when they update their code, to override these as well.
right.
Yes.
I would argue you should.
But then if you want a custom CompareInfo, you're now always paying the span back to string cost.
Yes. Unless we make them virtual. So I'm saying it's a
Which would be the point. If you would, I think we either go with we don't care about extensibility, so we leave them as is and then have luck, or we're saying, we need to change our implementation to say if the type is CompareInfo, just do the right thing, or otherwise, create a string and dispatch to the other one. I think if we do the latter, I would definitely make them virtual so you don't have to pay the cost.
I'm dreading all these conversations with all the various overloads with ReadOnlySpan string and UTF-8 string become, like there's going to be a whole bunch of, which one do we call? Which one do you overload? Which one's a good routed where?
Yep.
Conversations.
Do we plug UTF-8 through those API? I hope not.
we would
Yeah,
have to.
but
At some point, we would have
All
to.
of them?
The PKCS8 feature that I did,
Dreading.
we didn't backfill with arrays yet, and it's definitely virtual, and we'll have to
guess
figure
at
out
least you
how we
could
want that to work.
I already have UTF-8 implementations of these in my feature branch. So,
You're really setting me on your API?
no, it's even without UTF-8 string, like we need UTF-8 implementations of these, even if they're completely span based, like we need them.
All right.
So we don't have any of our own derivations of CompareInfo, right?
Nope, I just checked the index. Nothing shows up.
So this was slap virtual and everything because
I was going to
that's
say
the word du jour.
I was going to say don't make them virtual and don't delegate to the existing ones and see if anyone complains and fix it as a bug.
I roll my eyes at this suggestion, but do not voice direct opposition.
Well,
I had to say that out loud because nobody could see me roll my eyes.
you could also just seal CompareInfo at the same time.
That's a breaking change.
We have
Page down.
How do you feel about marking this as sealed?
Compare input code? I don't think we can.
Cannot do that. So what is the concern if we make those virtual?
Perfect.
You have to decide which way you route your.
Well,
Which you need to do anyway.
so this is again, there's a sort of two stages here. Forgetting whether these virtual do these or do these not delegate to the existing methods. If they always delegated to the existing methods, there's 0 point in having these because they're just going to construct strings, which is probably even worse. So if they are going to delegate sometimes, then you're doing basically saying if this equals type of CompareInfo, do the efficient thing. Otherwise, call toString and call the thing.
Right.
And then the next stage is, all right, well, do we make these virtual such that if someone was deriving from CompareInfo, they could override them? That allows them to do the efficient thing for their class, but it also means that unless we're able to devirtualize, unless the JIT is able to devirtualize, every one of these operations becomes a virtual call.
And then there's the question of if we make these virtual and we've done does this dispatch to the other one, or should we also go ask the other one, should it dispatch to this? Because that's actually the faster operation, but we'd be adding another type of check.
Potentially hugely breaking. If someone actually was deriving, it could get them into an infinite.
Yeah. So if data annotations actually had this exact issue, so it would be worth looking at that from an implementation perspective, see how they work out.
But if you wanted to override these, would you need to just override this one and then you would get it for both string and span, or would you always need to override both because history?
I would be inclined to say, well,
I don't think we need to make this virtual at all, and I don't think anybody would need to override it. This is fine.
the only reason you would need to override them is if we choose if we don't believe anyone ever derives from this thing, then we just don't have them delegate to the existing methods. If we believe that someone might be overriding those other methods, then we need to do the type check and delegate to the other ones if it's something derived from CompareInfo. And for that scenario, anyone calling these methods would then get worse behavior because we'd always force them down another path, and so we'd want to give the derived class the opportunity to override these.
Interestingly, there is actually an internal overload that takes read-only-span of char for things like compare, and it is non-virtual. And it seems like the logic just assumes no one ever subclasses this type. Because I can't imagine this logic would work otherwise.
I don't know. I wouldn't mind making them non-virtual, and we can always make them virtual. There's not a breaking change to make the method virtual, is it?
Sometimes yes. We generally don't consider them breaking, but it can be. The compiler we're going to call make calls to them instead of coverage. But the compiler generally doesn't. They almost always just call it.
Yes. Yeah. Does it imply we lean towards not making them virtual?
Yeah, making them. So they already exist internally, and they're non-virtual, which is bizarre. Also, add git hash code in here too. I think it's not part of the original API proposal.
Git hash code?
Git hash code of read-only-span char and compare options.
And this will then also randomize the hash code or not?
Because right now git hash code takes a string and
Wait, how do you even? Can you even derive from a CompareInfo?
Yep.
It doesn't have a public constructor, does it?
That would be bad.
No, it doesn't.
You're right.
There's no way to derive from CompareInfo.
This is why I said like I never saw it.
Well, in that case.
good call.
Are you sure?
Nice. Yep.
Yeah, we always have a static method to create comparing.
Uh,
We don't have a constructor.
It
We have
has an
internal
internal
constructor.
constructor.
Yeah, it has an internal,
Custom globalization things could, in theory, do it now.
it has an internal constructor, which
Internal,
means
okay.
anyone outside of us can't derive from it.
Is that also true for desktop?
That's what I'm
Yeah,
looking at.
it's. I mean, look at CompareInfo and API catalog. There's no constructor that I see.
It's a thing.
So there's not a single platform where there's a public
So,
constructor.
Wes, can we seal CompareInfo?
That's a really biased thing to see with that one.
It means that all of the virtual calls are now non-virtual.
No.
No?
Compiler calls. Still most things with covert for the notch.
No, but
No,
the
but the
JIT
JIT will do it.
Yeah.
Oh, the JIT will do it, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, well, the answer is deals don't have to be virtuals, and the implementation just got a lot simpler.
Yes.
Is it a breaking change to make something that's virtual non-virtual?
Could not be if no one's subclassing. Because even if the compiler emits a call word, everything's still fine.
And we generally don't go that direction. I was just sitting here thinking through whether or not we could actually legitimately seal it too. With breaking.
Always ask Jared.
I can't think of any reason why we can't seal it. Guarantee there's no derived people. There's no structure. But that doesn't. Does that actually block anyone? I mean, I know it's blocking people on C#, but in IL you don't need to have a base constructor.
Right, but I'm not necessarily concerned about people
I
who are
understand.
happy IL.
I'm just thinking about binary compatibility.
Right. So from my maybe sealing it, but that's not. We don't have to make these virtual, and I don't think we probably don't. It would probably be a won't fix bug if someone said, but I've written my own IL that derives from CompareInfo.
I guess the question would be like, does F# allow or VB? I don't think VB or F# do, but
Right.
if they did, then that would be the concern. But
That'd be a
otherwise,
compiler bug.
Well-
At that point.
well, I mean, if you can do it in IL and it's valid to do it in IL, then it would be valid for another language.
It wouldn't be valid in IL because you need to call the base constructor, right? So
No,
maybe
it's just non-verifiable if you don't call the
You
base.
don't have to call.
sure that would be in the realm of
In the realm of don't do that.
yeah. I would say I don't care anymore. You were a bad human or a bad compiler or both.
Like that,
Regarding the API shape, should we have the default? Should we keep it as not default?
I would do the default argument because otherwise you have to double the number of overloads again. And I don't see a reason why we would not make them default.
But all the existing APIs aren't default, right?
Yeah, but
They were
realistically,
made in the past. I think it's fine to have these.
Okay.
I mean they're substantially differentiated so they don't conflict, right? You never have ambiguities here.
Yeah.
All right.
Can we also capture adding the git hash code overloads?
No.
The overload would be git hash code of read-only-span of char and CompareInfo. I'm sorry, compare options. We're just basically ASP.NET needs it.
Yeah, also if we need to add this string compare support span, so we will need
Do you
to-
still need that text? Saying that you can derive from it, but you cannot derive from it?
Yeah. Doesn't matter. I get clarify that the type doesn't have a public constructor. In practice, nobody can derive from it, so it's fine.
Yeah, in the future, if we decided to have a public constructor, it would be a different.
But anything else? Otherwise, this is it.
Well, we brought Tarek here for the
For the
Badíʄ
that's what I'm saying.
calendar.
Yeah, we're just talking about this issue.
Yeah.
Oh,
Are you here for a particular issue too, or are you just hanging?
no, I'm just hanging out.
Making sure we're not ignoring you.
No, no. I'm just hanging out.
All right. So you talk to this guy about this calendar.
Okay, so this is called the Badíʿ calendar, but we call it Badíʿ calendar here. So this calendar is for the Baha'i faith. I mean, this is some kind of religion, and they have their own calendar. But their calendar is very interesting one because they have 19 months, not 12 months, and every month is 19 days. And in the same time, they want to align their year with the Gregorian year. So if you calculate 19 months for 19 days, the difference between the Gregorian year, it will be like either 4 or 5 months according to leap or not. 4 or 5 days. So the way they handle this, before the last month, which is month number 19, they insert 4 or 5 days. So they have like months from 1 to 18 and 4 or 5 days, and after that 9 months 19.
Okay.
And they call this 4 or 5 days ayamul ha. This is what they call it. Yeah. So this is also their calendar always start with the spring. I mean, the start of the spring is the start of this of the year there.
Okay.
And they recently, I think a couple of years ago or something, they decided that they will start according to the spring in Iran. Because, like, spring can start differently in different countries. I mean, like, it depends, like, it can start in March 19th or March 20 or March 21. I mean, it depends. But they decided about, like, they will go towards Iran. And they have, like, some committees called House of Justice, which is they decide for the religion and for the calendar. So, and they decided about Iran will be the place that we measure from where the year can start. And they published around like 60 years in advance now when the year will start. So we have some data for 60 years. And there is some guy which is using astronomical algorithms that he generated more data for like 200 years data. And he already followed up with House of Justice to make sure that they are okay with the data they have. So we have a data about, like, when if every year will start from now on, like 200 years.
Can we project out through the full range of daytime 9,000 years?
Yeah, I mean, okay. So every calendar have like minimum date and maximum date. Okay. So we can put the maximum date as we like. It doesn't have to be matching the max of it. Yeah, we already have today like Qora calendar, which is used in Saudi Arabia, which is it has like 50 years from now. I mean,
okay, so that's already handled then.
Right.
So is this something that Windows supports?
No, nobody supports today. I mean, as Microsoft, but other
ICU support it?
No.
We'd have
But
to carry
there is some other people providing their own libraries that support this. It's not inside ICU.
But if we were going to do that, we'd have to carry all the data in ourselves.
The data will be it's not that big deal because, like, in the discussion here. So basically about, like, we need to know that if the year start on like either 19 or 20 or 21, so it's 3 bits we are going to use for every year. With 200, about like it will be like 1K or something. I didn't calculate it exactly.
How many other calendars do we have in this boat where they aren't supported by ICU or any of those?
We have a couple. I mean, like Julian calendar, one of them, which is we support. Windows doesn't support. We have Duni solar calendars, which is we support. We don't support.
I was hoping you were going to say that we don't have any, so I can just say no.
Well, is there a large demand for inclusion of this calendar? Are we like is there a government requirement or something to support this?
The demand is coming from this guy and some couple of guys in this thread, but it's not that big.
Is there a reason it has to be in the platform rather than a separate Wicket package?
No specific reason. I don't think so. But later, I mean, like, if for example, if Iran decided to have this calendar as one of their supported calendar as a country, so we have to include it in the platform as well, because we have to add formatting, parsing, and stuff. So getting it outside, it will be difficult to handle this.
Are there other calendars in the same bucket that are we talking about this one purely because someone came to us and said it'd be nice? Is there like another 20 that we'd want to add as well? Or
no,
Can we make the statement that all the calendars we currently support are supported by some official government?
Like Julian calendar today, I mean, I don't think any government supported it.
Okay.
But it's used a lot. I mean, like in historical books and this stuff, Julian calendar is used all the time.
Yeah, I think my concern would be like it's effectively one of those things where, well, given the rules that you just outlined, like, I mean, what's the chance that, in 6 months from now somebody says, oops, no, we made a mistake, we need to update this date, and then are we then doing a servicing event for this thing, right? Because it doesn't seem like there are like,
Enough critical mass to want to.
a critical mass or like stable, or whatever you want to call this, but and then the question is, what's the burdens we are picking up with it? Because once we have it, we need to keep it up to date, right?
Are we missing something in the framework that would prevent somebody from doing a fully fledged out-of-band version of this? Like as a NuGet package? Every base API is there, every appropriate method is virtual.
Yeah. Even this guy, I mean, like our base APIs, I mean, like there is some stuff there that they have to override. Maybe it doesn't, it's not relevant that much.
So is there any reason then why they can just take the stuff, put a NuGet package, and then call it whatever you want to call it, and then if it ever becomes a requirement, we can talk to the platform? A different name, probably. I wouldn't put it in system globalization and cover them. I would probably put it in, my NuGet package dot. Okay. But I think like my knee-jerk reaction is it seems fringy, like as in like very few people will care. A lot of work for us to support. Is that fair, or is it?
Yes, but the only concern I have is like, this is related to some faith. I mean, like, somebody saying like Microsoft don't support this. Maybe it's like political issue.
No, I would use it, but it would be a strong argument if, let's say, Windows would support it. But if Windows does, if Windows gets away with not supporting it, we get away with not supporting it either.
Windows bar is different. Like,
you said they have a higher bar for calendars?
So Windows usually supports calendars, which is used officially by some countries, but they don't support any other calendar. But right now, I mean, framework is not. I mean, framework can support any calendar. It doesn't matter if it is by some country or not.
But again, like, what's the argument for why should this be in box?
Does Ubuntu or Mac or FreeBSD support this like out of box without having to install?
All what I saw is like some people just providing libraries that have this calendar. I'm not aware of any official Linux.
Yeah, but if some people are providing libraries the same as the NuGet package, right? This guy providing a NuGet package library for people.
Yeah.
Oops.
So this one I think is even worse than normal APIs. Like usually you will say we only add APIs to the platform if they're going to get usage and they actually have a scenario that's going to drive the usage. But generally when we add APIs, they're also not sort of in fluctuation where they're going to need to be updated on a regular cadence. This is something where it's going to have to be updated in some level of cadence, whether some level of cadence. So this is why I think the support cost of this guy is a little bit higher, I'd say, on a normal API. So I would say
I'm not expecting this. We will get updates that much. I mean, even like in 50 years from now, we're not getting updates for sure. But I agree. I mean, like, I'm not seeing big demand on it. I mean, like, not many people asking for this.
What are the thoughts then?
Seems like a great candidate package.
Yeah, I would also, like, I mean, in general, I would say my bar for fringy things, regardless of what it is always, prove yourself, as in ship a design somewhere, put it out, and if you get critical mass, then it makes sense to add it to the platform. But I would not start with adding it to the platform just because we can, because it's going to cost, right? Especially for things like this where you have data or international bodies that may change their minds, and then we have to react and do something about that. That is basically outside our control. I think that's even from a cost standpoint worse. Like, I think I would say if there is something that they can't do in the NuGet package, or the experience isn't there, I buy it. If the only problem is it's inconvenient because somebody has to download a NuGet package, that's true for any API, but we make that statement.
For your former statement too, if there was a reason they couldn't do it externally, I think that would be the thing that we should do first.
Yes, we should have an extension point that allows us to do that. But I think otherwise we're just chasing the long tail at that point, right? We're saying, anybody who ever invented the calendar, now we have to add support for that. That might be, I'm sure that's what we want. But that's, I mean, honestly, like, is there any way for us to measure this? Like, I mean, if they had a NuGet package, we could at least see the number of downloads. I would see, like, okay, how popular this is. All right, then. Anybody else?
Seems like a good API that should start life separate.
Let me put this in writing. Just probably the harder part.
So what is the bar now? I mean, like, for picking new APIs in general? I mean, like,
We have to describe scenario and somebody's actually using it. That would be useful.
no, but how many is using it? I mean, like, I'm seeing like some issue like in tests, for example.
Not necessarily on purely the number of usages. It's also about enabling more scenarios. Like when we're adding a lot more span releases, it's basically enabling a new path of like for performance particular reasons and things like that that we couldn't actually accomplish, and they couldn't do it above without duplicating all the logic that's already in the framework. So there's things that have to be in the platform because they're tied tightly coupled to existing stuff in the platform.
I also think there's a difference. Everything is it's hard to have hard and fast rules. Everything's a case-by-case basis. But the more you get into globalization, religion, anything like that, I think we should be I would be concerned about making a mistake in some fashion that causes an international issue. Wait, I think let someone else take the lead. Windows or the operating system or ICU or someone who's focused on those particular domains before, and then we can follow suit. I'm more hesitant to try and lead, but maybe that's just me.
By the way, we've actually had this exact issue. Like in some of our Unicode handling APIs, we have names that are, I forget the names offhand, but we have names that are like not really offensive or forbidden, but like kind of geopolitically rough. And the way that we're able to work around those is we say we're following this RFC to the letter, and we're just using the exact same names they do. So that's, I think that speaks to your point. There's a standards body that says this is what we should do.
In contrast to your point about tasks, I could certainly add an API to tasks. That would be terrible, but I don't think I would offend anyone with it.
But
have you talked to Ben Adams?
Lately, to add as little stuff as possible to like core effects and core CLR, unless, to Wes's point, like it's required for a scenario. So like the unsafe class, for instance, just taking that as an example, like I would love to have that fully out of band so that we could just keep operating on it, very rapidly. But because it requires weird interaction with the JIT, it has to belong in box. But I would think that that's effectively the bar that ideally we would be going for. Like the only things that ever go in box are things that absolutely, or things that it would be very inconvenient to have to write yourself.
Does this go back to the, we might want a CoreFX extensions repo that's specifically for things that were like, we don't need this in CoreFX because it doesn't need to be part of like the core framework, but it's something that we would ideally still like to own and provide to customers because we see that it might have good value.
So from my perspective, and I think I may be alone on this, I don't think repo needs to be tied to ship vehicle. And I also personally don't see the value in having a CoreFX extensions repo that for whatever reason groups together a whole bunch of unrelated projects. Personally, if it's in CoreFX, it's because we believe it's core, but that doesn't mean it has to ship as part of the platform. And if it's not in CoreFX, it can be in its own repo for a particular library. That's my.
We already have
CoreFX lab.
Yeah, I know Wes disagrees.
No, we already have this experience. I mean, we got CoreFX lab.
Well, CoreFX lab is like for experimenting and prototyping
That's a bit
things.
different.
But it's the same idea about like, we got some demands before until people like go and do it there. And if you got demand on it, we can move it to the core.
Well, CoreFX lab,
which is,
we delete stuff from them too.
yeah, I mean.
Yeah, we need another place that we can ship individual library packages that don't have, they can kind of ship individually by themselves, rev on their own cadence, and not have to be forced to be shifted and revved every time we ship the platform. That's the key difference, I would say, why I don't like everything in CoreFX. I don't like revving and shipping every one of these every time if there's not.
Well, we don't have
change. No, but if you don't have to, but it makes things more difficult to kind of segregate and make things work from like source code perspective, other perspectives, and crossing concerns there.
But it could also double work, right? On the sense of like we add these two CoreFX extensions and then we decide we want to have it inbox, then we will have to
that's
move
true
it down to
we're going
CoreFX.
to move things around in some cases. So whether or not it's in the same report or not, yes, it's just a matter of whether or not you have to move the code. But to me, I had to deal with the nightmares of servicing this stuff every single time and trying to keep them segregated and separated and like versioned correctly and deciding when we ship this and that. It makes it a lot more.
Yeah. I feel you there because I worked there for like 5 months.
All right, so I think we are pretty much out of time. I don't think we can do anything in 7 minutes. So anybody objection to those notes? Otherwise, I will send on those.
You need to close the issue.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I would probably go with closing it, and then if they come back to us and say, okay, we have the cash on NuGet now, we have $25,000 or something like that, let's reopen the discussion. Maybe I should.
Yeah, you can add this comment.
Yeah, that would be probably a good idea to add. Actually, let me type this in my text box here, because otherwise it would take me way too long.
Add globalization to your custom dictionary.
Regular dictionary.
Right.
Which one?
Support should be supported.
Oh. Yeah, I think all typos, but I haven't fixed the grammar. Grammar is hard.
Grammar is hard.
Thank you. Right. Thanks. So I think that we're also done with the streaming. Let me just.
hadn't seen these .NET Maestro bot messages before. I detected changes in the release 2.1 branch.
Oh, yeah,
Does that not
that's
merge it